Ravensbrook. Even its name sounded like a raven's croak.
Evelyn shivered as her car crawled down the muddy path. Fog, thick as cobwebs, clung to everything. Trees loomed, skeletal fingers scratching at the fading light. This village, nestled deep in the forgotten corners of the map, held a dark allure. Centuries of whispers, unsolved disappearances. Evelyn, a historian drawn to shadows, had finally arrived.
The village was smaller than I imagined. A cluster of houses huddled together as if seeking comfort from the oppressive fog. The air hung heavy, pregnant with secrets.
She could almost taste the past on her tongue, bitter and cold. A shiver ran down her spine, but whether from the chill or anticipation, she couldn't say. This was her element, the unknown, and Ravensbrook had mysteries to spare.
I need to understand what happened here, Lucas. The disappearances, the whispers, they all lead back to this village.
Ravensbrook's history is dark and twisted, Evelyn. The answers you seek may not bring you comfort.
The village's reclusive librarian, Lucas Marsh, was the keeper of its secrets. His knowledge of Ravensbrook's past was unrivaled, and Evelyn hoped he could shed light on the shadows that plagued her research.
Have you seen anything unusual? Anything that might explain the disappearances?
Strange things happen in Ravensbrook, miss. Whispers in the fog, shadows that move on their own. It's like the village itself is alive.
The villagers spoke in hushed tones, their eyes darting nervously. Evelyn sensed their fear, a palpable thing that clung to the air like the ever-present fog. They spoke of a pact, an agreement made long ago, but the details were shrouded in mystery.
The library was a sanctuary. Sunlight, weak but welcome, filtered through dusty windows, illuminating shelves upon shelves of books. The scent of old paper and leather hung heavy in the air, a comforting aroma for me. Lucas, true to his word, had given me free rein. I wandered the aisles, trailing my fingers along the spines, each one a whisper from the past. Ravensbrook's history was here, somewhere, buried beneath layers of dust and neglect. I found myself drawn to a secluded corner, tucked away behind a towering stack of ancient tomes. A small wooden chest lay on a table, its surface etched with time. Curiosity piqued. I lifted the lid. Inside, nestled on a bed of faded velvet, lay a leather-bound journal. Its pages, yellowed and brittle, were filled with elegant script. The first line sent a shiver down my spine. The fog whispers tonight, and it speaks of things best left undisturbed.
The journal belonged to a woman named Anya, who had lived in Ravensbrook centuries ago. Entry after entry detailed strange occurrences, eerie whispers in the fog, and fleeting glimpses of shadowy figures. Anya wrote of a malevolent presence in the woods, a being she called the Wraith, that preyed on the lost and lonely. Her words, filled with fear and desperation, leaped from the pages, painting a chilling picture of a village held captive by an unseen terror.
I devoured the journal, each word fueling my fascination. Anya's terror was palpable, her desperation a tangible thing. The nights in Ravensbrook are never silent. There are whispers, soft and insistent, like the rustling of leaves.
Evelyn tried to ignore them at first, dismissing them as tricks of the mind. But the whispers grew louder, more urgent, filling the silence with a sense of dread.
It's as if the very air here is alive with secrets, with voices that want to be heard.
She knew she had to listen, to understand what the village was trying to tell her. The whispers were warnings, echoes of the past, calling out to those who dared to uncover the truth.
The journal's words clung to me like cobwebs. Anya's terror seeped into my bones, a chilling reminder that Ravensbrook's history was not confined to dusty pages. It lived and breathed in the fog, in the whispers of the wind.
Determined to find answers, Evelyn sought out Lucas, the journal clutched tight in her hand. He listened, his face a mask of stone, as she recounted Anya's words, her voice trembling with a fear she couldn't quite suppress.
The Wraith, it's more than just a legend, Lucas. Anya believed it was real, and now I do too.
The fire crackled in the library hearth, casting flickering shadows on Lucas's face. He remained silent for a long moment, his gaze distant. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, laced with a weariness that went beyond his years.
The Wraith is real, Evelyn, but it's not something we talk about. Not anymore.
His eyes, the color of storm clouds, met hers, a flicker of warning in their depths.
Some things are best left buried, forgotten. The past has a way of reaching out, claiming those who seek it too eagerly.
Forgotten? Is that how you deal with it? By pretending it never happened? People have disappeared, Lucas. Anya, countless others. Their stories deserve to be told. The truth deserves to be unearthed, no matter how buried it may be.
Evelyn's words hung in the air, a challenge to the silence that had long shrouded Ravensbrook's darkest secrets. Lucas sighed, the sound weary and resigned. He knew he couldn't dissuade her. Evelyn's determination, her thirst for knowledge, mirrored his own once, before the shadows of Ravensbrook had claimed his youthful curiosity, leaving him with a heart steeped in caution.
Follow me.
He led her to a secluded section of the library, the air thick with the scent of decay and forgotten things. Rows of ancient volumes lined the shelves, their leather covers cracked and faded. These were not the neatly cataloged histories of Evelyn's world. These were the whispers of Ravensbrook, passed down through generations, shrouded in fear and superstition.
So many stories, so much fear.
They poured over the texts, their whispers the only sound in the stillness. The Wraith, they learned, was not a single entity, but a manifestation of the forest's ancient darkness. It fed on fear, on the souls of those who lost their way, both literally and figuratively. It was a shapeshifter, appearing as a wisp of fog, a shadowy figure, a voice on the wind.
Each encounter, meticulously documented in faded ink and crude drawings, paints a horrifying picture of a being both ethereal and terrifyingly real.
The villagers, bound by fear and tradition, had learned to appease the Wraith, to offer sacrifices in the hopes of satiating its hunger. But the disappearances continued, a grim reminder that some hungers could never be satisfied. An outcast, shunned by the villagers for her unsettling insights and her connection to the unseen. But the details remained elusive, shrouded in half-truths and fearful speculation. There was one person, Lucas finally admitted, who might possess the knowledge they sought. The more they unearthed, the more fragmented the truth became. Whispers of a curse, of a powerful artifact that bound the Wraith to Ravensbrook.
She spoke of the Wraith with a familiarity that bordered on reverence, her voice a low thrum that seemed to vibrate with the secrets she held. Margaret Halloway lived in a dilapidated cottage on the outskirts of the village, her only companions a clouder of black cats that slunk through the fog like furry phantoms. Her eyes, as ancient and fathomless as the forest itself, held a knowledge that sent shivers down my spine.
It is not a being of malice, but of sorrow, of anger. It is tethered to this land, bound by a pain it cannot escape.
Bound by what?
An artifact, a talisman of great power, both light and darkness intertwined. It is the key to the Wraith's existence, the source of its strength and its prison.
The search for the artifact consumed them. Days turned into nights, the fog seeping into their very bones, blurring the lines between reality and nightmare. Evelyn began to experience vivid dreams, or perhaps they were visions, glimpses into Ravensbrook's past. She saw Anya, her face etched with terror, fleeing from a shadowy figure that rippled like smoke.
I heard whispers, disembodied voices that seemed to emanate from the fog itself, calling my name, beckoning me deeper into the forest's embrace. The line between my research and the supernatural began to dissolve, leaving me with a growing sense of dread that chilled me to the core. The wraith, I realized, was aware of our search. It was toying with us, drawing us closer to its grasp.
Lucas, too, seemed to be succumbing to the village's darkness. The shadows beneath his eyes deepened, his usual quiet demeanor replaced by a haunted restlessness. He spoke less, his gaze often distant, lost in thoughts he refused to share. But Evelyn saw the fear in his eyes, the flicker of recognition when she described her visions, a confirmation that they were treading on dangerous ground.
The villagers, sensing the growing unease, retreated further into their homes, their faces shuddered, their eyes darting nervously towards the fog that seemed to press closer each day. They had lived with the wraith's presence for generations, had learned to coexist with its silent menace. But we, in our pursuit of the truth, had upset the delicate balance, had awakened something ancient and hungry.
Margaret's guidance, cryptic and laced with warnings, led them on a winding path through Ravensbrook's history. They sought clues in the crumbling headstones of the village cemetery, in the faded records of the church, in the whispered stories passed down through generations of fear. Each piece of the puzzle, once unearthed, seemed to deepen the mystery, leading them further into the labyrinth of Ravensbrook's past.
Then, as we huddled over a centuries-old map, its parchment brittle and marked with strange symbols, a breakthrough. A name circled in faded ink leaped out at me. Anya, the journal's author, had not simply vanished. She had been laid to rest in a secluded corner of the cemetery, her grave unmarked, forgotten by all but the earth and the fog.
The air hung heavy with anticipation as they made their way through the fog-shrouded graveyard, their footsteps muffled by the damp earth. They located Anya's grave beneath a weeping willow, its branches trailing like mournful fingers towards the ground. The inscription on the headstone, barely visible beneath years of moss and decay, confirmed their suspicions.
Anya Blackwood, it read, the letters worn smooth by time and the elements. May she find peace in the embrace of the earth. But it was the inscription beneath, barely a whisper etched into the stone, that sent a chill down my spine. The raven guides, the pendant binds, the artifact's location, hidden in plain sight, a secret buried with the dead. The key to ending the wraith's reign lay within our grasp, but at what cost?
The pendant, buried with Anya. A cold knot tightened in Evelyn's stomach. The air, already thick with fog, grew colder, heavier. She could feel the weight of unseen eyes upon them, hear the whisper of movement in the stillness.
"We have to be quick," she breathed, her voice barely audible above the rustle of the wind through the willow's branches.
Lucas nodded, his face pale but resolute, and together they began to dig. The earth, damp and cold, yielded reluctantly. Each shovelful felt like an intrusion, a violation of the sacred ground. The scent of decay, of earth and time, filled their nostrils, clinging to their clothes like the fog. Evelyn's heart pounded against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the silence. Fear, sharp and primal, clawed at her, urging her to flee, to abandon this folly. But a deeper instinct, the historian's relentless pursuit of truth, spurred her on. She had come too far, unearthed too much to turn back now. The wraith held Ravensbrook captive, its grip tightening with each passing generation. Anya had known this, had tried to warn them. Evelyn owed it to her, to all those lost to the fog, to finish what had been started. Finally, their shovels struck something solid. Wood, softened by time but still resisting their efforts. Evelyn dropped her shovel and knelt, brushing away the last of the earth with her gloved hands. A wooden casket, its surface blackened with age, lay exposed beneath the willow's mournful gaze. The air crackled with anticipation, with a growing sense of dread. This was it. The source of Ravensbrook's torment lay within their grasp. Lucas produced a crowbar from his bag, its metal cold and heavy in Evelyn's clammy hand.
"Are you sure about this?" he asked, his voice tight with apprehension.
Evelyn met his gaze, her own a mixture of fear and determination.
"We've come too far to turn back now," she said, her voice echoing his earlier words.
The crowbar groaned as Lucas wedged it beneath the casket lid. The sound amplified in the stillness. The fog, as if sensing their purpose, pressed closer, swirling around them like a living entity. The air grew colder, the scent of decay stronger, suffocating. Evelyn's breath hitched in her throat, her fingers tightening around the crowbar. She could feel it now, the presence in the fog, watching them, its unseen gaze burning into her skin. With a final agonizing groan, the casket lid splintered, revealing its contents. Evelyn gasped, her hand flying to her mouth to stifle a scream. Anya lay before them, her body remarkably preserved, her skin as white as alabaster, her lips stained a deep, unnatural red. But it was the object clutched in her skeletal hand that drew their gaze, that held them captive with its macabre beauty. A pendant crafted from silver and bone, its surface etched with intricate symbols that seemed to writhe and shift before their eyes. A raven, its wings outstretched in flight, formed the centerpiece, its obsidian eyes glinting with an eerie inner light. The air crackled with energy, with a power that sent shivers down Evelyn's spine. The pendant pulsed with a faint ethereal light, illuminating Anya's face with a ghastly glow.
"Take it," a voice whispered, raspy and cold, seeming to emanate from the pendant itself. "Claim what is rightfully yours."
Evelyn hesitated, her hand hovering over the pendant. Something felt wrong, off. The voice, laced with an ancient sorrow, tugged at her, promising knowledge, power. But beneath it, she sensed a darkness, a hunger that both terrified and enticed her. Lucas, his eyes wide with alarm, stepped back.
"Don't touch it, Evelyn," he warned, his voice strained. "It's a trick," he said, his gaze darting around the graveyard as if expecting the fog to coalesce into a tangible threat. "The Wraith, it's trying to lure you in, to claim you as it claimed Anya."
But Evelyn, her gaze locked on the pendant, couldn't tear her eyes away. The raven's obsidian eyes seemed to beckon her, promising answers to questions she hadn't even dared to ask. The fog, as if sensing her hesitation, surged forward, swirling around them, its tendrils cold and damp against their skin. The whispering grew louder, more insistent, morphing into words she could almost decipher.
"The pendant, the power, yours for the taking."
Evelyn's fingers, drawn as if by an invisible force, reached out, brushing against the pendant's cold, smooth surface. A jolt of energy, raw and untamed, surged through her, knocking her off her feet. The world dissolved into a kaleidoscope of colors and shapes, the air alive with a cacophony of screams and whispers. When Evelyn opened her eyes, she found herself no longer in the graveyard, but in a realm of swirling fog and twisted trees, their branches reaching for her like skeletal fingers. The Wraith awaited. It towered above her, a grotesque amalgamation of shadow and fog, its form constantly shifting, its edges blurring into the swirling mist. Evelyn, her heart pounding against her ribs, scrambled back, her hand instinctively reaching for the pendant that now hung heavy around her neck.
"You sought knowledge."
The Wraith boomed, its voice a chorus of whispers, of screams echoing through the ages.
"And knowledge you shall have, the knowledge of your own mortality."
Evelyn, her initial terror giving way to a steely resolve, rose to her feet. She had faced down her fair share of ghosts in her pursuit of the past, but none as ancient, as powerful as this. The pendant, warm against her skin, pulsed with a faint light, a beacon in the swirling darkness.
"This ends now.
Her voice was surprisingly steady.
You are bound to this land, to this artifact, and I know its power."
The Wraith, its form flickering, seemed to hesitate, a flicker of uncertainty in its ancient gaze.
"You misunderstand. I am not its prisoner. I am its guardian, bound to contain its darkness, to protect this world from its true power."
Evelyn faltered, her certainty wavering. Could the Wraith be telling the truth? Was this entity, this embodiment of terror, not the villain of her story, but a tragic hero, sacrificing its own peace for the safety of others? The pendant pulsed against her chest, its light growing fainter, the raven's obsidian eyes seeming to dim, as if its power were waning. Time, it seemed, was running out. The fate of Ravensbrook, perhaps even the world, hung in the balance. Evelyn had a choice to make, one that could either banish the darkness or unleash a horror beyond imagining. The pendant grew warm in Evelyn's grasp, its heat a stark contrast to the chilling fog that surrounded them. The wraith's words echoed in her mind, a confusing mix of sorrow and warning. Could this creature, this embodiment of fear, truly be a guardian rather than a destroyer? Evelyn's grip tightened on the pendant, her mind racing. The raven's obsidian eyes, once blazing with an eerie light, now flickered like dying embers. The wraith's form, once solid and menacing, wavered, its edges blurring further into the swirling mist.
You weaken,
Evelyn whispered, her voice barely audible above the mournful sigh of the wind through the spectral trees. The wraith, its form shrinking, its movement sluggish, let out a low growl that reverberated through the fog-choked realm.
The pendant, it binds us both. Destroy it, and you free us both. But the darkness, it will not be contained so easily.
Evelyn hesitated, her gaze darting between the fading form of the wraith and the pendant pulsing warmly in her hand. The decision felt monumental, the weight of Ravensbrook, of the world beyond the fog, pressing down on her. The pendant seemed to thrum with a desperate energy, urging her onward, guiding her towards a choice.
Evelyn, don't listen, it's a trick.
The fog parted for a brief moment, revealing Lucas struggling to break free from the grasping tendrils of mist, his face pale with fear, his eyes filled with a desperate urgency. His words, a lifeline thrown across the chasm of doubt, sparked a fire in Evelyn's heart. She had come to banish the darkness, not bargain with it. With a cry of defiance, Evelyn raised the pendant high above her head. The raven's eyes flared one last time, a blinding flash of light that illuminated the swirling fog, revealing the spectral trees in all their twisted glory. The wraith roared, a sound filled with rage and despair, as a surge of energy, raw and untamed, erupted from the pendant. Evelyn closed her eyes against the blinding light, her hand instinctively clutching the pendant tighter. The world spun. The ground seemed to dissolve beneath her feet. The air crackled with energy, with the feeling of something ancient and powerful being undone. Then silence. A silence so profound, so absolute, that it felt like a physical presence. Evelyn opened her eyes, her body trembling, her heart pounding against her ribs. The fog, no longer a swirling, suffocating presence, hung limply in the air, like a shroud slowly being lifted. The spectral trees, their branches no longer reaching for her, stood stark and silent against the emerging dawn sky. Evelyn found herself standing in the familiar clearing where she had unearthed the pendant. The grave of Anya Blackwood, a silent sentinel behind her. But something was different. The air, although still heavy with the scent of damp earth and decay, felt lighter, cleaner. The oppressive weight that had clung to Ravensbrook for centuries, the suffocating blanket of fear, had begun to dissipate, replaced by a cautious hope that flickered in the hearts of the villagers who now emerged from the retreating fog, their faces etched with a mixture of disbelief and wonder. Weeks turned into months. The fog that had once choked Ravensbrook thinned, revealing a landscape scarred but healing. Sunlight, once a rare visitor, now bathed the village in a hesitant warmth. The villagers, their fear giving way to a cautious optimism, began to rebuild their lives, their whispers now tinged with hope rather than dread. Evelyn, hailed as a hero, found herself torn. The village, once cloaked in terror, now held a strange allure, a sense of peace hard-won and easily shattered. Lucas, his demeanor still shadowed but his eyes clearer, threw himself into researching the pendant, seeking answers in ancient texts, hoping to ensure the wraith's darkness remained dormant. He had become Ravensbrook's silent guardian, a solitary figure wandering the fog-thinned paths, ever vigilant, forever marked by his encounter with the shadows. Evelyn knew she couldn't stay. The city, with its noise and chaos, called to her, a stark contrast to the hushed stillness of Ravensbrook. She packed her bags, her heart heavy with a mixture of relief and regret. As she climbed into her car, the engine sputtering to life in the morning mist, she saw Lucas watching her from the library steps, his silhouette framed by the doorway, a solitary figure amidst the gathering light. Their goodbyes had been spoken the night before, filled with unspoken words and lingering glances. Evelyn took a deep breath, the air tinged with the scent of pine and damp earth, the aroma of Ravensbrook, an aroma that would forever hold a bittersweet tang of fear and freedom. As she drove away, the village receding into the distance, she could have sworn she heard a whisper on the wind, faint and indistinct, but undeniably present. The wraith was gone, but its memory, its essence, lingered in the fog-kissed air, a chilling reminder that some shadows never truly fade. And in the echoing silence of Ravensbrook, Lucas Marsh listened, his heart heavy with the knowledge that their story wasn't over. It was merely waiting to be written again, in the whispers of the wind, in the rustling leaves, in the fog that might one day return to Ravensbrook.